think we should get started, and those who can join us a little bit later will. Welcome. My name is Lydia Mann. I'm the Director of Admissions Outreach at Clark University. Welcome to Clarktoberfest. We are very, yes, Sarah. We are very, very excited to be with you this evening. We're sorry that we can't welcome you to campus in person, but in some ways, we're even more excited that we get to share Clark with more people in more places, and that as we go through this month together, you'll actually see more of Clark than you would have if you'd spent an afternoon on our campus. So make sure to be checking out the Clarktoberfest site because the sessions are each 45 minutes long and they will go into so many different aspects of life at Clark. And if you are a student and you attend 3 or more of these, we actually are going to send you a pretty cool Clarktoberfest t-shirt as long as you have a US address to send it to. So with that, we'll get started. Like I said, I'm Lydia. I came to Clark 2 years ago. Before that, I was a high school counselor at a boarding school where I saw almost 80 college campuses in a 4-year period. And while I was touring those schools, Clark really stood out to me as a school that was committed to place and as a student body that was really committed to making change in really interesting ways that were also really positive. I met a lot of glass half full type people, and that really attracted me to Clark. I am joined tonight by Nico and Sarah, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves briefly before we get started. Nico, do you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everyone, my name's Nico. I am an international student from Quito, Ecuador. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a senior here at Clark studying philosophy and political science. Outside of admissions and my academics, I am also an assistant at the Dean of Students office. I am the president of the International Students Association, one of the many identity-based clubs on campus. And then finally, this year, I am lucky enough to be part of 2 honor societies, Phi Sigma Tau, which is the International Philosophy Honor Society, and aside from that, Griffin and Pleiades, which is the oldest honor society here at Clark. And we're up to some cool projects this semester, so hopefully I'll be able to tell you more about those.
And Sarah?
Yeah, my name is Sarah. I use she, her pronouns from Milford, Connecticut. I am an urban economic geographer with a concentration of urban studies. I'm also the stage manager for Clark Musical Theater, so you can ask me any theater questions, as well as a member of the Student Activities Board and the Geography Student Union. I also just finished up an internship at Leading Cities, which is a global nonprofit that I'll be talking more about later.
So with that, we will get started with the information session. So the first thing that we're going to share is mostly academic and admissions related information. We will go through a little bit of student life at Clark, and then we will save a lot of time for your questions, we hope. I don't think we'll be able to get to every single question this evening, but we will do our best. If you do have a question throughout the presentation, please enter it in the Q&A box on Zoom. You can hover at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on how you have it set up. We won't be looking at the chat. So again, your questions should go in Q&A, and we will get to as many of those as we possibly can. So who is Clark? Clark University is 2,200 undergraduate students, so we are a large, small school. Definitely small, but on the larger size of that category. We have 800 graduate students on campus, and we'll talk a little bit later about what our graduate school does for our undergrads. Our students come from 40 some odd states every year. About 15% of our students are international students, and they're coming from about 80 different countries around the world. 29% of our students identify as students of color. Our average class size is about 20 with a 10-to-1 student to faculty ratio. We have 17 NCAA Division III sports teams, over 130 clubs and organizations, and we have exactly 0 fraternities and sororities. Clark is a research university where the undergraduate experience is really focused on a liberal arts approach. We are the place where wind chill, birth control, and modern rocketry were all discovered. And Worcester, where we're located in Massachusetts, really matters to who we are. So liberal education and effective practice. Here at Clark, we call that LEAP, L-E-E-P, and there will be a session on LEAP next week. For us, this is our approach to our curriculum, the way that we educate our undergraduate students. And it came to be because our faculty actually many years ago researched the most successful Clark graduates. And that didn't just mean that they had the most high-powered jobs and made the most money, but they were also the happiest after graduation and the most satisfied with their education at Clark. And our faculty wanted to give the experience of the most successful to the entire student body. And so that is what LEAP is. It's giving that experience to everybody. And there are really 4 pillars that define that approach. They're the first year intensive, the program of liberal studies, problems of practice courses, we call those POP classes, and a capstone. So the first year intensive, when we looked at successful Clark students, we noticed that they had great relationships with their faculty. So a first year intensive class is going to be one of the first classes that you take at Clark. It's going to be a lot like a first year seminar at another school. It's going to be you, a faculty member, and about 15 other people deep in discussions on a topic of your choice. Pretty unique to Clark is that faculty member serves as your first advisor. So your first advisor isn't just somebody who knows you through conversations and through what you say you like to do, but they actually know a little bit about the way that you learn. So as you go and you explore different parts of our curriculum, you're going to have a faculty advisor who knows where your strengths are in the classroom and can help lead you in that way. So to talk a little bit more in depth about the FYI, I'd love to have Sarah explain her experience in it.
Sure. So I came into Clark completely undecided. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So my summer advisor advised me to take an FYI in something that I was just interested in. She said, no pressure if it's something that you don't want to do forever. So I took a class in the theater department called How to Act Right on and Off Stage, which met for 3 hours on Friday morning. And the first half of the class was how to act right off stage. So that was really transitioning into college, really making sure that we were doing well in terms of meal plan and roommate, as well as just a time to talk to strictly other first-year students in a class. And then in the second half of the class, we talked about how to act right on stage. So that was improv, sketch comedy, and our final project, which was to write, produce, direct, and perform a smaller play inside a smaller group of students in that class. So it was a great opportunity to know other first-year students, as well as my advisor, who's the professor. Really knew me because our class started at 9 a.m. on Friday mornings. So he knew angry and tired Sarah, and he was able to tell me which classes and which kinds of departments I should really explore after the first year intensive.
Thank you. So the second pillar is the program of liberal studies. And what our faculty found is that students who had explored the full breadth of our curriculum, much in the way that you would a liberal arts college, really were the most satisfied in their careers after Clark. So they're right brain and left brain people. They're creative and they're analytical. You could write a paper on our current pandemic that is really, really steeped in science, and then write a letter to the editor at my local newspaper that somebody like me, who's not so steeped in science, is going to understand. We really wanted students to have experience with the full curriculum. But we also wanted you to have choice within it. So we don't have really hard, strict requirements, and we're not a totally open curriculum. Instead, you're going to have a lot of choice within the courses that you take in the categories on your screen. So verbal expression, aesthetic, natural, scientific. There's a lot of different things you can choose from, but again, we just want you to be able to use your brain in lots of different ways and think creatively about the world around you. So Nico, do you want to talk a little bit about how you approach the PLS?
Yeah, of course. So I think that the PLS is very important to my Clark career because through the first course that I took for the PLS, which was personal values, kind of like an intro level ethics class, I realized that I like that stuff. And philosophy was really what I wanted to do. Super early on, it was one of the first classes that I took here at Clark. And in order to fulfill the values perspective, that class really taught me that philosophy was my future, just like not in undergrad, but is something that I want to pursue after as well. But on the other side of that, once I had already, set my mind on philosophy, I realized that, I had to explore the rest of the perspectives. And part of the challenge for that was aesthetic perspective. I have never been able to do any art whatsoever. And kind of analyzing how much and how far I wanted to go outside of my comfort zone while still fulfilling the perspectives, I realized that for the aesthetic perspective, I could take intro to screen studies or foundation of screen studies, which is what the class was called. And that class, while it of course helped me learn a lot about the many intricacies of film, it also in some ways strengthened my ability to write, my ability to analyze, comprehend theory, and how to put it into practice, how to analyze it in like something that we all like doing, like, watching movies. So yeah, I'm always very, very grateful for the PLS experience.
I'm always impressed too when students who are far smarter than I am figure out through this approach to education that they should study two things that seem separate but are actually, you can bring them together. So we have a recent grad who studied theater and computer science. In my brain, how do those fit together? In her brain, they fit together very well. She graduated and now works for TripAdvisor, which is like a travel planning website if you haven't been there before. And they wanted somebody who understood what it meant to tell a story, to entertain the crowd, to create that narrative arc and a climax, but then could also code it on their website. And so her job search was really, really successful, bringing two things together that I wouldn't have known to do.
Well, yeah, one of the main things that I'm looking forward to right now is one of the other perspectives that I took was intro to computer science, and that sparked my interest a lot in artificial intelligence and how machines learn, and that is actually shaping how I found the subject of my thesis, which I'll talk about later, and where I want to go to after I'm done with my undergrad experience. So I completely agree with you.
Great. Thank you, Nico. So the third pillar of the LEAP curriculum is problems of practice courses, or POP courses. And I mentioned that I had been a high school counselor and toured a lot of schools, and this really stood out to me about Clark. Worcester is a really interesting city in New England. We're actually the second largest city in New England. Not many people know that, just after Boston. We're about 45 minutes west of Boston. Yes, you can take the train and it's very, very easy. But Worcester itself is pretty cool in its own right, and 25% of our residents are born outside of the United States. Within 20 minutes of the city center, you have hiking trails and beautiful outdoor spaces to go fishing or walking or do whatever you want. And POP classes really take advantage of this setting. So the faculty member teaching the course, and we ask that every student takes at least one, the faculty member teaching the course has actually committed to the idea that part of this learning is going to happen outside of the classroom. So an environmental studies class might test water quality for a nearby area. As we all learned in Michigan, that's really, really important, and it's really high stakes learning that we need to get right. Our highest level French classes could help Senegalese refugees through the immigration process. So translating court documents, even showing up in court to stand beside those with whom you work. Again, high stakes learning to bring really positive change to our community. And art history classes could curate an exhibit at the Worcester Art Museum. So there's a lot of different things that you can do through this level of hands-on learning. Sarah, I think you were going to talk about a POP class or two. Yeah.
Sure. My favorite class that I've taken, and probably the class that I learned the most from at Clark so far, was called Urban Ethnography. And through a geographical lens in the geography department, this means really research at a micro level. So I was used to hearing like, let's get the biggest sample size for research, but this was the opposite. It was really honing in on a few different experiences and thinking about how research sometimes leaves some voices behind or some stories behind, and how we can help those stories by really making their stories factual and making them historical, which was a really cool thing to learn about and then see happen in Worcester. So our final project that really took the whole semester was to pick a place in Worcester to study, again, at that really micro level. So I spent about 30 hours at the local elementary school during their Big Brothers Big Sisters after school program, just watching volunteers and kids interact with each other, and then also interviewing volunteers and some higher ups in the Big Brother Big Sister program, and then finally going to the Worcester Library to look at the historical records of how that program started and how it is where it is today. So it was a great chance to meet some people outside of Clark. So I met a lot of really cool elementary schoolers, and then again, do that really awesome research paper. It was about 30 pages long. It was a doozy, to really understand how research can be seen differently, which was cool. And definitely important to think about who are the actual community leaders and how do cities function? Not just thinking about city officials, but, the people who spend all their time tutoring kids or picking up trash on the sidewalk, and their importance, which was important because I'm looking into a city planning myself. So to see this firsthand was really inspiring.
Great, thank you. I do think that in these classes, students have experiences that either confirm that what they thought they wanted to do is what they want to do, or actually change their mind. So I'm glad it confirmed for you, Sarah. All right. So the fourth and final pillar of the LEAP curriculum is the capstone. The capstone could take the shape of a traditional thesis. It could take the shape of research, but you can also get creative with what your capstone looks like. So if that's staging a production, if you're into theater, or an art show, if you're an artist, somehow incorporating an internship or a volunteer thing that you do. All of that is possible. If you don't necessarily want to start your own project or work so independently, you can take a capstone course, which is the highest level course in your chosen major. And that's probably going to involve a lot of group work and probably some research again. But there's a lot of choice in how you approach this final step. And the reason why we felt like this step was so important was because students who graduating feeling like they'd accomplished something challenging, that maybe there were little failures along the way, but it worked out anyway in the end, were more successful in their first few jobs after college. They felt like they could propose initiatives that were a little bit risky and work their way through it and figure out how it was going to come together in the end. If you do double major, you are going to do 2 capstones, but it's very possible you can do them in different semesters if you want. It's very normal to double major at Clark. So Nico, you mentioned your capstone earlier, but do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny that you mentioned that you can do them in 2 different semesters because I somehow ended up doing them both this semester. So right now I'm going through the political science and the philosophy capstones, and we're at a very early point. They're both very academically minded, so it's basically just a lot of research, reading a lot, discussing with people in your major. They're all seniors normally, so you get to know everyone else in your department, but I actually want to tell you all about my thesis in philosophy. So aside from taking the capstone, I'm also deciding to do an honors thesis on top of that. And what I'm working on right now is recreating an argument that 13th century Catholic philosopher Thomas Aquinas kind of spread out across his work. For all those who don't know, he wrote a very lengthy collection of works, as people used to do, like very, very, very lengthy. And all along, he sprinkled these ideas that faith and reason weren't really incompatible. They actually worked together fairly well in order for us to, reach enlightenment, let's say. And I'm trying to reconstruct that argument, put it together in a concise 30 pages. Give or take, more like 40, 50 if my advisor lets me. This has been a culmination of like something that I discovered very early on at Clark in my philosophy classes. That is, for a theories of ethics class super early on, I started thinking about Aquinas, and then my professor actually asked me if I wanted to work on a thesis project that kind of culminated that development. And so I'm very excited. Not only am I working with the professor that I've been working this whole time, but with a lot of super, super smart people at the philosophy department that are going to probably attack me in many different ways when I have to defend it. I'm super excited.
Thank you, Nico. I think that also highlights the relationships that students develop here at Clark with their faculty. You will have 1 or 2 faculty members who you know really well as advisors, or they're teaching your capstone or something like that. But the whole department and the whole faculty is open to you, and attending their office hours and getting to know them is part of the norm here on campus. So moving on from the academic curriculum to life after Clark. So it's great. You had 4 years as an undergraduate. You feel really, really prepared. What happens next? We are really proud to say that 97% of our 2019 grads were employed in graduate school or engaged in meaningful service, such as Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, or a fellowship, such as a Fulbright, within 6 months of graduation. Officially, 84% of our students completed an internship before their senior year, but when you start to think about things like the pop classes and how our clubs, you'll learn this in a minute, but our clubs are so intertwined with the community, it's hard to believe that not 100% of our students actually have something that resembles an internship before their senior year. And then at the bottom of your screen, you see Clark Connect, which is a Clark online network. It will allow our students to have informational interviews with alumni, get their first jobs through alumni. All the alumni on this platform have opted in to helping current students find employment. In its first year in operation, which was just a year ago, there were almost 1,000 meaningful connections made. So connections that amounted to something, if that was the informational interview or the first job. And with only about 600 students in the graduating class, that's almost 2 connections for every student, and we're really proud of that. It's been going really well, and that would be open to you. If we were at a college fair, if I was traveling to your high school this fall and you came up to my table and said, what is unique about Clark? Which is always a good question to ask and very fair. I would not hesitate to tell you our 5th year accelerated master's program is unique about Clark. In the different colleges where I've worked, I've always wanted to be able to answer that question honestly and with enthusiasm, and there's no difference here. We are one of 2 schools in the entire country that I know of that offer this program, and we are the only school that offers it in fields outside of STEM fields. What is it? So I mentioned earlier that we have about 800 graduate students on campus. We are a research university. Having a graduate school means that all of the subjects that you see on your screen are potential master's degrees that you could earn from Clark tuition free. So if you're really interested in earning your master's in physics, it might be a good idea to major in physics. But if you are really interested in teaching or public administration, there are many different ways to get to those fields and things that you can do once you are in them. So really every major is eligible for one of these programs. You need usually about a 3.4 GPA to be accepted. You apply to the program as a junior at Clark, so you choose the one you like and you apply. If you are accepted, you take a handful of master's level classes alongside your senior year curriculum. It's doable, it's possible. Students do it every year. You still graduate with your undergraduate degree, your bachelor's on time. You go through all the pomp and circumstance with your class. Your family can see you walk the stage. We just ask that you stay for 1 consecutive year. So you have to stay a 5th year, and it's totally tuition free. And at the end of that year, you will have earned your master's degree. So it is an accelerated timeline as well as an incredible cost savings to our students. And the first time I heard about it, I was suspicious. I will admit it. I thought, this is great. Which 3 students get to do that every year? And I was really, really impressed that it's actually 1 in 3 students get to do that every year. So this really is widely available to our student body. Reasons people don't do it, like the student I mentioned before, they go through a job search, it's successful, they don't want a graduate degree, or they're interested in grad school that we don't have. There's no law school or medical school on this list, although we have great pre-law and pre-med programs. You just couldn't get your 5th year here. All right, admissions and financial aid, I'm gonna run through. In terms of what Clark is looking for in our student body, I hope that you've picked up on it a little bit already from Nico and Sarah, but we want students who are really excited about what they're learning and excited about being part of the communities that they find themselves in. So to us, that means you have taken a handful of challenging courses in your high school if they're offered, but it doesn't mean that you've maxed out the AP curriculum. Again, with such hands-on learning in our curriculum, we want students who are willing to try something a little bit difficult, not get it perfectly the first time, but have the resiliency to try it again. And I think sometimes that's what the handful of courses shows us. Although if you have maxed out the AP curriculum, kudos to you, there's still room for you here. And it's just not a requirement for us necessarily. In terms of grades, we're looking for strong students, but that's on an upward trajectory. We have a lot of former educators in our admissions office, and the idea that you get to high school and you immediately know how to do high school is a little bit far-fetched. So if your 9th grade year was a little bit more of a struggle than your junior year, we're okay with that, but we want to see a strong junior year from you. And then that you've been involved in the world. And I know that with this new pandemic that we find ourselves in, that's changed what that might look like to you. So maybe before it was the soccer team or your part-time job, and maybe now it's helping out more at home, helping a younger sibling with online school. figuring out that you're a journal person and what that's done for you, but somehow you're engaged in your community. On this screen, you can see all of our admissions and financial aid deadlines. Whenever your application is due, your financial aid application is due. It's the exact same day. Our early decision and early action deadlines used to be November 1st. We have changed those this year to be November 15th. Again, we know that this pandemic has affected the timeline for your schooling, the way that you're learning, and we wanted to give you 2 weeks to get used to whatever format you're learning in and to get to know your teachers a little bit better. We also changed our application fee to $0. It costs no dollars to apply to Clark this year, and that was very intentional. We know that a lot of families have been affected financially, and we really want to make sure that everyone who wants to apply to Clark applies to Clark this year. In terms of what we require, it's 1 teacher rec. A lot of schools require you to get 2, so feel free to send 2 if you get them. A counselor recommendation, your high school transcripts. We would love to see you for an interview. We're doing those on Skype, or not on Skype, through Slate, but we're doing online interviews right now. And maybe Nico or Sarah would actually interview you. And we really want that to be a positive experience. We want you to come in thinking about, what have I done well? What excites me? What am I passionate about? That's how you prepare for your Clark interview. What are the things that I love the most? Come ready to talk about that. And then we don't need standardized tests. We don't need standardized tests this year because they are very, very hard to take, and we didn't need them last year or the year before or the year before that. We've been test optional since 2012. We really believe in being test optional. We do not award any financial aid related to test scores, so we are test optional there as well. So please don't go crossing state lines, trying to take a test 12 Saturdays in a row. It's difficult this year, we get it. We're not going to penalize you at all. And so financial aid, I mentioned we have merit aid. Scholarships usually range between $10,000 to $20,000 a year. There's one scholarship, the Presidential LEAP Scholarship, that requires an extra step. You have to write a few additional essay questions. It's full tuition, room and board for 4 years. So it's a huge scholarship. It's highly competitive. But if you're interested, you have to mark that you're interested on your Common App. Otherwise, all of our other merit scholarships, everyone is automatically considered for them. So just by applying, you've done your work there. For need-based aid, we need the FAFSA and the CSS profile. 85% of our students receive some form of financial aid, and Clark is really committed to making this education affordable to you and your family. And if you have any questions, you can work with us in the admissions office and the financial aid office throughout your process. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Nico and Sarah now to talk a little bit about student life.
Thank you. So let's start with what it's like to live in Worcester. Fun fact, my dad was very afraid that I would get a Massachusetts accent coming to Clark. So every day I just try to disappoint him a little bit more. Let's talk about Worcester. So there's 60 parks, 400 restaurants, 10 museums. Those are just some fast facts for you. But I think in terms of actually living here, it's something that I wasn't thinking about when I picked a college of what town or city it was going to be in. So I was shocked when I got to campus and saw just how much the student body loves Worcester and loves the heart of Worcester. There are people like, hey, we're going downtown to go to the city council meeting if you want to come. And I'm like, city council? Like, we're just here as guests. And they're like, oh no, like, we need to be doing more. So the community engagement office also does a lot with that, listing all the events that are happening in campus, around campus, and even outside of our little area as well. The downtown area of Worcester is probably about a 25-minute walk. And they have events all year round in that area, like an ice skating rink in the winter. There's a lot of farmers markets in Worcester as well. And just a great time, I think. I really liked living in Worcester. And now that I live off campus in an apartment, it's fun to get to know my neighbors and just more of the scene. It's fun.
Yeah, I definitely concur with the neighbors. The Greek family next door invites me to dinner sometimes, or used to invite me to dinner. Now they're taking care, but yeah, honestly, I miss them a lot. I used to see them more often. Oh, well, now I miss my neighbors. So I'm going to talk about student clubs and orgs. So as Lydia mentioned earlier, we don't have sororities or fraternities, so no Greek life here at Clark. That means that we fully rely on our clubs and orgs to put up all of the let's call it student life here on campus. So events, party celebrations, fundraisers, food festivals, sports festivals outside of varsity, and all that cool stuff. So we have 130 plus clubs, and that number has definitely grown since I got here even. And it keeps growing every day. Today I learned that we now have Middle East and North Africa student association. So that's super exciting. Another identity-based club for us to work with and promote. So the range of clubs is just all across the board, dance clubs, culture clubs, identity clubs, athletic clubs, as I mentioned. If you, I kind of hinted at this, but if you have an interest that is not shown by any of these clubs, you can always start your own. You just need a couple signatures, talk to a couple of people, and you're ready to go start your own club. And clubs provide you with a lot of opportunities, which I think is not something that we talk about here too much. Of course, it is a social experience. You get to learn a lot about the people here at Clark. You get to connect with people all across, majors and interests and years. But something that we don't talk a lot about is that it also provides you with a lot of professional opportunities and ways to build your resume. Even me, that I'm not a part of any, professionally driven clubs, I still can say confidently that I've been a part of organizing 100, 200, 300, even a 2,000 person event. So, and that is all through clubs, and something that I'm super proud of. So I personally am in the International Students Association, the coolest club. Nothing biased there. And a lot of the events that we do provide an opportunity for international students to get to know each other. And that, of course, is the case for most clubs on campus. So yeah, clubs are really important here. We love them.
Right. And if 130 clubs are not enough for you, you can also leave campus. So study abroad and away, we have over 50 programs in over 30 countries. And those are Clark affiliated programs, which means you would get a full semester or 2 semesters worth of credit for the program, as well as if you are a domestic student, your financial aid would carry over there. In terms of what programs we have, 50 is a lot, so they range. You can do a research-oriented project, you can do an internship, or you can do more of a homestay situation that you might know from movies, where you'd be technically going to classes that other study abroad students are doing, or you could do direct enrollment in another university, which a good example of that is the London School of Economics. I chose to study away, which means I was off of Clark's campus for a semester, but I did not leave the United States. I was in Boston for the spring of 2020, which ended up being the best decision of my life, just on the unprecedented circumstance. But that was mostly an internship-based program. So I thought, well, I'm looking at city planning. Doesn't really make sense for me to learn another country's city planning rituals. So I stayed in the Boston area and worked for Leading Cities, which is a global nonprofit that connects entrepreneurs that have really cool ideas for sustainable and resilient cities with the actual city officials that can implement them. So a big frustration with entrepreneurs that are coming up with tech for sustainable energy or making governments more efficient or tech-friendly cities is that city officials don't really like change. But as we're learning throughout coronavirus and even before, is it's really necessary to continue our cities into the future. So it was a great way to hear from these entrepreneurs firsthand that come with really cool ideas, what they hate about city officials. So when I eventually become one, I have a better idea of how I could be better. But that's just one program. I had roommates last year in Senegal, Africa, Argentina, Seville, Spain, France, Germany, London. So all around are all options for you there.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, athletics. So here at Clark, we have 17 varsity teams, 8 club, and 8 intramural. We are part of the New England Women's and Men's Athletic Conference. We're a Division III school. 16% of undergrad students participate in varsity athletics, and something that I find really cool is that 100% of our varsity teams participate in some sort of community service. My favorite example is B1, B2, which stands for books first, basketball second. So our varsity basketball team goes into local elementary schools, I'm pretty sure, and they read books to the children, and then they take them out and teach them some basketball, which is such a cute image. I just imagine like these basketball guys which tower over me. Like I'm not gonna be humble. I'm a pretty tall guy, and these guys are taller than me, and they're playing basketball with like children-sized children, and I don't know. I hope they're going easy on them. Otherwise, it wouldn't be too fair. But yeah, aside from that, I do want to mention that aside from that, we have intramural sports, which are just Clarkie against Clarkie, and then club sports that are still a competition against other schools, but you don't have the same level of commitment to training and all that good stuff. But those are still ways to stay active. Even aside from that, we have other options to stay active, like the yoga club, Zumba classes, even self-defense through the martial arts club. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff happening in athletics.
Thank you. So now we're going to move into answering your questions. And just to review, if you have a question, we're checking the Q&A feature in Zoom. So hover at the top or the bottom of the screen, enter your question into the Q&A. Whatever is in the chat, I'm not looking at, I apologize. So just make sure it gets in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer everything we can before 7:45. So I'm going to take care of a few shorter questions, and then I'm going to throw some student questions to Nico and Sarah. There's a question about applying early action and when you find out your admissions results from Clark. So early action and our first round of early decision are due on November 15th. Early decision, we hope to have to you mid to late December. When you get your decision from Clark, you will get your financial aid decision as well. So you will be able to weigh the cost of attending Clark with your acceptance. For early action this year, again, it's due on November 15th. We will be getting those back in January with your financial aid as well. So that's that timeline. Another question about the interview and how it works in terms of your application at Clark. We recommend an interview because I cannot think of a case where an interview did not help your application because we get to talk about different things. So it just helps us learn a little bit more about you, a little bit more about what excites you, what you're interested in. The Common App is really, I mean, it's great, but it's formulaic in what it asks, right? What are your extracurricular activities? Answer this essay question. That's sort of the limit of your creativity with the Common App. So the interview is just a time where we can talk about almost anything. And so we do recommend signing up for those. And I would say it counts in the way that it helps you. We learn more. If you don't interview, that's fine too. We will see what we see on your Common App and know that for not every student is an interview possible. So we'll take that into account as well. Questions about living on campus. Who lives on campus? What percentage? When do you have to live on campus? Who would like to answer that?
No, I can go ahead and take that. I wouldn't know exact percentages of students, but I do know that about 1/3 of juniors and a half of seniors move off campus. But you are required to live on campus your first 2 years at Clark, and a lot of juniors and seniors decide to stick around on campus as well. And there are options for that, like Maywood Hall, which is suite style living, you know, like a living room, a bathroom, and a bunch of rooms, or more apartment style living, like in Blackstone, which is, you know, a living room, a bathroom, and a kitchen. So yeah, those are a couple of the options, but you will most likely arrive to campus to a traditional double, which is just you sharing it with someone else.
Thank you. Question about dining on campus. What's the food like?
I have to say, I walked past the cafeteria today and was so sad because I'm not on the meal plan this year, and it smelled like jerk chicken, which is my favorite meal, but it's fine. I'm a big fan of the food. What's the general consensus? I think it depends on where you're coming from. If you are someone who had a lot of homemade meals all the time. It might not be up to your caliber, but I think, sorry, did I cut out? Um,
We can hear you.
I think I'm better. Sorry, it says my internet is unstable. Oh, good. Okay. I'll keep going then. Um, but I really appreciated the cafeteria more than I thought I would. We only have one main cafeteria and then a bistro style kind of place on the side, which is more of to-go options. So I thought coming into campus I might get sick of it, but it turned out to be my favorite place to go. We run on a buffet style, so if you swipe your card in once, you can just enter the cafeteria and eat as much as you'd like and stay there for as long as you would. So I definitely overstayed my welcome on most days, spent about 3 hours there, just eating popcorn from the popcorn machine, talking to my favorite person on campus, Tammy, who works at the sandwich station and made my ham and cheese with a little bit of mayo on a bulky roll every day. And that's really condenses like the cafeteria experience is you get so close with the cafeteria staff. They really feel like they're cooking for you, and it really shows. Like they will come up to you like, how did you like the new mac and cheese? And you do eat on like real plates with real silverware, so it just feels like your living room at the end of the day.
For students who are undecided about their majors, is that an okay thing at Clark? How do students start to explore that kind of stuff?
So I won't take up too much time here because I mean Sarah did come in undecided. I didn't, but I think that being undecided here at Clark, especially during your first 2 years, is honestly such a great experience. I think because it really does open your experience to anything. You know you don't have any boundaries. I think that when I came in, I came with the idea of like, I want to do political science. I only want to do political science, politics. So I wasn't really like looking outside. Anything that I took was really just to complete perspectives. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Sarah, can you tell us about your experience being undecided?
Yeah. That was actually one of the main reasons why I was interested in Clark early on. Was it was one of the few schools that I was looking at that didn't ask what my major was and didn't even want to hear what my major was before I came to campus, which I thought was very respectable for talking to 17 and 18-year-old students. I just felt a lot of respect there. Like, hey, you don't really know anything about the world. I was like, that's true. And that's how I kind of felt like it was. And I was nervous that it would just be like a facade, but coming onto campus, I really did feel like people who did know what they wanted to do were pushed to still explore and hold off on having a major until they really got a good understanding of different classes, which is cool. And I think opens a lot of doors for people who might think they want to do something and realize that it's not what they want to do. Clark definitely understands that it's never too late to switch majors, add on a major, and add on a minor.
Somebody asked if there is a running club or less competitive running team. I can answer that one. Yes, we have cross country, and if you want to join, you can. So more than welcome to explore Worcester on foot. It's fun to do so. Nico and or Sarah, would you describe your relationship with your faculty, with your professors?
Oh, I'm so excited about this. I absolutely, so I have, of course, my advisor for philosophy and my advisor for political science. And honestly, the person that I'm the closest to in the faculty is neither one of those. It is my thesis advisor. And I think that even anyone else in the philosophy department, especially, I think I've just become so close to because I have an opportunity to talk to them before, after class, just reach out to them, email them. And actually, I was talking to my Capstone professor, who is another professor aside from that. His name's Ravi Sharma, and I was asking him like, hey, I want to use the Capstone paper to apply to grad school. And he was like, oh, if you're thinking of applying to grad school, we should get all the professors together so that we all can give you advice on what grad school's like. And so on Wednesday, I came back from work, sat down, and I just sat in front of, I think it was like 9 philosophy PhDs telling us about their crazy experiences in grad school, what to look out for, what to think about, how to take care of yourself during grad school. And that was like, oh, they really care about us. Like they're really killing out like a whole hour of their afternoon to tell us about like things that happened 30, 40 years ago. Even Patrick Durr, I think he's like 80 something right now. He was telling us about grad school in like the 50s. Incredible stuff. Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Oh, sounds great.
We have time for about one more question. And so I think in this period of time when, and I should say we are open for campus tours. If you come from a state that Massachusetts is allowing you to come into the state, you have to follow all the guidelines, the state guidelines. They're one-on-one tours, outside only. So if you live locally, you can go on our website and sign up for those. There was a question about signing up for interviews. Those are on our website as well. Just go to the admissions tab and you'll see them. You can also find it on the Clarktoberfest webpage in the bonus events tab. But for students who might not be able to come to campus this year, they're a little bit further away, it's not possible, transportation-wise, in terms of their own health, whatever the reason. What's one thing that they should know about Clark that maybe you already knew coming in, maybe you didn't know it coming into Clark, and you've learned it since you've been studying here?
Sarah, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think one thing they should know is to sign up for ZME, which is a great way to hear from more ambassadors, not just us. Put the link in the chat about what student life is like. Great chance to see more in the residence halls and buildings that you might not be able to see on tour. But also something that I think is tough to see virtually is just the community aspect. Even this year, unfortunately, you might not see it on campus, but in normal circumstance, just I think the size of campus really holds a great community atmosphere. And one of my favorite things that I wasn't ready for is how exciting it is to see like 10 people that you know on the way to class from the cafeteria or in the cafeteria in the library. That really enhanced my learning and networking and friend networking at Clark. That was very important to my success.
I think that kind of along with that, something that I was very lucky to find out super early on, and you might have realized it from when I was talking about it earlier, is clubs. Clubs are a really important aspect of campus. As I said, they're not only professional opportunities, but they're also social opportunities. That's how I met. A lot of the friends that I have now were people that I met through clubs, but more importantly, it was a support system when I first got here. Like I remember we were planning this huge event that I was talking about earlier, and it was the night before. Everyone had been like stressed. Imagine like a hell week for any like theater event or whatever, tech week I think you call it. We had like not been sleeping. We were super exhausted. We had been working for days on end, so crazy, like such crazy hours. And I was just like looking over this group of people sitting all huddled together. We were doing like a goodbye to the seniors. It was their last event. And I was just looking over and I was like, oh, this is crazy. This is what I wanted out of college, such a diverse group that just had such deep love for one another. And it sounds super corny. Like I'm so self-aware about like how corny it sounds, but it's so real. And a lot of the people have gone on to like, other countries and study different things and work at different places. And I still keep in touch with a lot of them. It's still like just like a family away from home.
Yeah, I think what each of you said is really important. And I would add that this is a really safe space to try on new things too. So if you want to be part of a dance troupe and you've never danced before, if you want to play musical instrument or a cappella, if you want to try out for Model UN, our team is great. It is a very supportive environment to try something new and see how you are at it and see how you like it. So get my slides back. Here we go. So just so you're aware, our next event is going to be Monday at 4 to 4:45. It's an academics panel, so we're going to have faculty from the STEM fields there to answer all of your questions. So if you're interested in anything related to science, technology, engineering, math, please attend that panel. A reminder to students, if you participate in 3 or more of these, you get a really cool Clarktoberfest shirt. We just need a US address to send it to. So just make sure you sign up and show up. And we're really excited to kick off this month with you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, I wish that we were all together in person. And in some ways, we're getting to meet each other, even more people who wouldn't be able to make the trip to Worcester. So it is a double-edged sword, but I'm super happy to have you here. And for those of you who are interested in a recording of this session, we will have a recording of this session. It will live on the Clarktoberfest website. Give us the weekend and we'll get it up for you next week. So thank you. Thank you to Nico and Sarah. Thank you to all of us for joining us, and have a great weekend. Stay healthy.